This is Unfiltered, presented by Youth of MCC.
So with everything going on, we're going to be starting a new series with the Black Lives Matter, and this is going to be our first introduction episode to that.
Kind of wanted to just get a feel for everybody here, kind of just to see how you guys feel about it, what you guys know about it, and if you guys have had any, kind of just your own personal experience.
Well, I am Black, so the movement has always been very personal to me. A lot of people feel like it started with Trayvon, but it actually started with Emmett Till, actually, a young Black boy who was murdered.
In 1945, right?
I believe it was 1945. The year always escapes me. It was a very long time ago. And his body was mutilated beyond recognition.
By two.
But his mother opted to have an open casket funeral so people could see what was done to him. And so I would like to think that even though Black Lives Matter, the movement the organization didn't start until 2013, but for the Black community in America, it's kind of been an ongoing thing since
it's always just been here
since Emmett Till, and even before that as well.
Wow, 1945. That is, I did not know that.
Jim Crow didn't end until like 1965, I believe. So like people always assume that this is something modern, but it's something that's been going on for years.
Right, like think about the civil rights movement. That's literally where it dates back to, like the 60s, the 40s, the 50s. And that's where it hasn't even started then, but that it's been going on since then.
It's been, honestly, I would say that Black people have been fighting for this type of equality ever since slavery ended. So the Black Lives Matter movement is currently a big point of discussion, and the reason why is people find it uncomfortable to talk about, but the reason why it's uncomfortable is because racism is uncomfortable. And it shouldn't be up for discussion or debated in any way, because right now what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement is it's not a political issue, but it's a humanitarian issue. We are at a point where we have to stop and say, as a society, why is it that a Black person's life is valued as less than a police officer's life or a white person's life, or to be frank, any other person of color, because unfortunately this systematic oppression is very predominantly directed at Black people.
Yeah, I know. I definitely agree. I think as a brown, I guess like Muslim in our society today, we have to kind of thank the Black people for what they did, because again, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be where we are today either. And I think that's a lot of thought that we need to, that's something that we need to.
No, we often forget that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's something that we forget, and we should be on the front line also supporting as much as possible, because again, let's say if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, and again, I would definitely agree with that.
So I personally identify very closely with the Black Lives Matter movement due to my personal identity, like racially and ethnically. Being North African, the matter between life and death is very different for me and my cousins when faced with something like police brutality. North Africans do vary in terms of looks and skin colors and how they project their identity or their racial identity. And me being someone very light-skinned compared to my cousins who are actually darker-skinned and take the features of African American people. For me, a traffic violation would be just a traffic violation because of the privilege I have. Right. But for them, they could be the next name, they could be the next hashtag because of simply skin color. Like, people of color are expected to be, like, thankful for a spot at the table, but they're not even being served, like, the same meal. Like, people of color in this country are having that issue where they're like, you should be thankful for what we've given you. You should be thankful that you have equality, and it's been so pushed to us that we almost believe that we are equal in the eyes of the law and the eyes of society. But in reality, there's been a distinct history of white people dominating, whether that's in the workforce, whether that's in the education system, whether that's in terms of racial profiling and who is more likely to be incarcerated. And the issue is, it's ridiculous that in 2020 we're still having this discussion over why this color of your skin should not matter. It shouldn't affect the way that you are regarded in society.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Hannah. So how I think about it in the football aspect or the football perspective. So when you think about football, when you think about the players, the majority of the players are African American. And Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, he actually just recently mentioned this, that only 2 people in the organization, so like the higher management, are African American or minorities. So that in itself is like, you think about that and it's just like, wow, like why are the African Americans not given a spot like that, or right? Or why are they not given a position of that nature? Why are they only considered, the football players? Why are they only the people that that are making the money for the organization, but they're not on the top of the actual organization making the
It's
the
such a
top
divide.
dollar,
Yeah,
right?
it's a really
So
big divide.
and again, that applies to basketball too. I don't know exactly what the ratio is with black owners, but I definitely know it's not even close to the amount of white owners there are.
Right.
So I think that's definitely something that we need to think about, and it's something that is not mentioned enough, basically.
And you know what? That goes back to the idea that people of color are expected to be thankful for what they're able to achieve in society right now. Like, they're supposed to be thankful for the fact that they can even play basketball or football alongside
Right,
white
that they
players.
even have that, like, like they
Right.
can actually go out and they're able to do that kind of stuff. Like, they should be thankful for something that we, take for granted easily.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's shameful because in reality, there's a huge disparity between equality for white people and equality for people of color in the U.S.
Not even just white. I feel like there's a lot of privilege, like, within our own communities as well. Like, within our own Desi community. What do you guys think?
I think that both the Arab and the Desi communities, I can only speak for myself being Arab, they do struggle with racism in the communities where
Right.
I've heard experiences of people in the masjid where other people would not stand, shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot with someone of, African American descent or like very visibly black.
I've actually seen something, I think it was on Twitter or Instagram, something like that, but it was a thread about how this black man was going to the masjid, and whenever he would stand in line to start praying, everyone would, like, move away from him, or they would ask, like, are you Muslim? Like, should you be here? And, like, oh, why are you praying? And then he explained that over the years, like, that stopped him actually from going to the masjid and, like, attending any masjid-related events, and that, stopped him from getting close with his religion too. So I feel like that has such a big impact on our own Muslims, and that drives them away from not only our community but from the masjid itself.
I grew up in the MCC community, which we all know is predominantly Desi, with like a sprinkle of Arabs and Bosnians. But yeah, me and my cousin and sister, we actually experienced a lot of targeted anti-blackness. And I say that over racism because it wasn't 100% Desi, but also just like our interactions were not very isolated, and it was the behavior was a little more, it was more focused than just like regular old racism. It was anti-blackness. I had I had a lot of kids call me Kalu, which
Right.
I didn't learn obviously until after I had been called that it was a
Right.
slur. And these were young kids too, so their parents were using this kind of language around them at home. And then I also just got a lot of looks and side eyes and everything because I was literally the darkest person at MCC for like the entire 10 years that I was there. And I didn't mind it so much.
Until, like, it affects you with everyone else that, like,
Yeah.
like, there's just their negative comments. They're like,
Yeah, the negative comments, the
behaviors.
negative connotations. I had a lot of comments about my intelligence, for one thing. They would circulate a rumor around that somebody had failed like a big exam, and I knew obviously that I wasn't the person that failed, but they would
The attention directed towards
perpetuate
you.
that stereotype
Yeah.
that black people are unintelligent.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff, I've gotten over it because, at the end of the day, MCC taught me my faith, and it taught me my deen, and taught me how to be close to God. So the things that I did take away from him, like the positive things, were really positive. And I'm able to look back at MCC in a somewhat positive light because, my faith is really important to me, and I kind of prioritized that. But at the same time, it was a little surreal and out of this world to be raised in anti-blackness.
Of course.
That's good.
like
Honestly, alhamdulillah, like you were able to,
Alhamdulillah.
keep your deen strong. I think, like bringing it back to the Desis, I think a lot of times black is considered ugly, right?
It
for
is.
for Desi specifically, right? There's all these ads about like fair and lovely.
I know,
Everyone's always
yes.
trying to,
Yeah.
preach light skin is better. Like, oh, like rung to safe, right? That's like literally
Yeah,
like, oh, your
exactly
skin
what it
is light,
says.
right? So,
yeah, I was going to talk about that.
yeah, that's something that is like, again, extremely prevalent within Desis, and it's like that's wrong. Like that should not be a thing. Like we should not preach that black is ugly, black is bad, because it's not. And at the end of the day, that's literally what we are and
Yeah.
what we become.
And I feel like our community doesn't even realize that the term galu is literally a slur.
It's a slur.
It is. And they don't, I feel like they just throw it out casually, like it's no big deal, but they don't, like, we obviously know that there are negative connotations associated with that, but we still don't even think about, like, how it's a slur.
It's not even just the way that, like, or the word itself. It's the way they
Ways.
say
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right. So the way they say it is like they say it with either like they'll put a lot of emphasis on it,
Emphasis,
and they'll just try to make it seem like a bad thing, So, and again, like Desis in general are very like stereotypical as well when it comes to like
Very
black
ignorant.
people. Yeah, they're very ignorant when it comes to that. So they're just not educated enough, and that's again it's another part of the problem and why organizations like Black Lives Matter are very important and something that we definitely need to encourage people to either donate, look into, because again it's only gonna be better for us.
I feel like especially within our Desi communities, we need to like start spreading not necessarily awareness, but people need to know like exactly what's happening and why it's so wrong. Because even our parents, let's say, like I think a lot of us can say that our parents are probably racist, like they even probably use the term galu a lot. So I feel like we need to educate them as much as we can and raise that awareness within our own households so we can have that sort of unity within our community itself, like even the masjid.
So the main, I guess, not detractors, but the main argument against Black Lives Matter is all lives matter. And I just want to, I don't know, I'm kind of talking off the top of my head here. But first, Black Lives Matter does not insinuate that all other lives do not matter. Mm-hmm. And the entire movement is Black Lives Matter too, like Black Lives Matter as well.
Yeah.
Because it's been proven time and time again, century after century, that Black lives don't matter as much.
Right.
Because people who are saying, oh, I'm for Black Lives Matter, but I'm not for the destruction of property, you're still putting inanimate things above Black lives.
Right.
And I don't know, people don't do that often because, things are getting destroyed in Palestine and Syria. And I've never heard anybody say, well, they should be peaceful, they shouldn't be getting violent, that kind of thing. I only ever hear it in reference to Black Lives Matter. And I also like to say, or I have been saying as of late, that all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter.
I've seen
So, and, it's easy for me to, I guess, make this personal because I am Black. So when I say Black Lives Matter, it's not necessarily about the hashtag. I'm saying that I matter. And as I guess, what most people don't know, like, especially if you're a Black person in America, is that either you or somebody has been touched by police violence. I actually do have a relative who was murdered by police. It was in the 90s, so I was alive but not conscious of my existence. Yeah. And this was a mentally ill relative, and the police was called on him, and unfortunately he was murdered. I don't talk about it a lot because, wow, it's a heavy topic. Mm-hmm. I don't think my family told me about how he passed away until I was a little older because there was a lot to deal with. But so I've had, I guess, personal skin in the game for a really long time, because that could easily, when the police are called on me, I could be the person of my generation that this happens to, and then that could keep happening. Because I have other relatives that I don't know as well, who've either had negative experiences with the police, or just, their own little horror stories. Like, I have family members that have gone missing. We have family members that we still don't know where they are. Obviously, it's hard to tell, like, whether or not there actually, was police involvement. But the point is that their lives don't matter to other people who don't know about them. And yeah, we all hear about the Eric Garners, the George Floyds, and the Trayvon Martins and everything. But my uncle's name was Ed Hall. And people don't hear about that. Is that it's really personal to a lot of Black people. And so, like, until my uncle's life, my life, my mom's life matters, then I don't think all lives can ever matter.
So let's talk about some different counter arguments. For example, there's the Blue Lives Matter. Do you guys have any takes on that, or does anyone kind of know a little bit about it?
Does anybody want to say something before I?
No, just
Well,
go
I
ahead.
can say something, and I think that Blue Lives Matter is an argument that's only been used to counteract the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think that blue lives don't matter because they don't exist. Being a police officer is a choice. It's not a part of your identity that's unchangeable. It's something that you can get up and quit, but you can never get up and quit being black. And so how can all lives matter in terms of career? It's not your identity, it's your job.
Okay, so there's a smidgen of history behind Blue Lives Matter. So when the Ferguson protests were happening back in the day, who was it? Michael Brown, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. After Michael Brown was murdered by police, the Ferguson, Missouri riots, protests and riots became like big national news. Blue Lives Matter came about when 2 police officers were shot and killed. So on paper, they didn't do it just to counteract Black Lives Matter. Police lives were lost. But on the same token, Hannah's exactly right. As blue lives are not a thing. They don't exist. Because a police officer, he can go home and he can take off that blue uniform. I can't go home and take off my blackness. It's not going anywhere. I was born black. I'm going to die black. But a police officer, if they're shot and killed, they're not going to die blue. They're going to die whatever they are, whatever skin color they are underneath. And so that's why I don't believe that blue lives matter ever, because there are no blue lives. And it's not, like Hannah said, it's not an identity. I had somebody who I didn't know at all who texted me. I'm assuming that they were related to a police officer, and they said that, I swear, they texted me. They're like, "You're a dumb piece of for saying blue lives don't matter." I didn't respond because it was 1 a.m. and I had taken my medication already. But no, blue lives don't matter. Because you can make an argument for all lives, but blue lives, no,
just not a thing.
I don't even bother entertaining, because it's ridiculous. And at the same time, it's done in like a way to diminish Black Lives Matter.
Right.
So that's kind of my take on that.
You know what's absolutely shameful about the Blue Lives Matter movement is that people will support it because they're like, oh, my dad's a cop, my uncle's a cop, and I'm sure your dad or your uncle is a great person and they're very important to your family, but those same people don't understand that that same dad just took somebody else's life. So there's always going to be a loved one that cares about whoever the victim is, you know? And so you can't support an entire movement meant to derail another one simply based off the fact that you have a relative that's a cop and a good person.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That, again, it's extremely sensitive topic, and again, that's definitely appreciate you for sharing that with all of us, because again, that's something that we might not understand or might not know, because there are definitely a lot of people that go without knowing that they either passed away or they were affected by this. So thank you for that.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.